This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Hello, everybody, and welcome you guys into another episode of the GSMC Sports Podcast, presented by GSMC Podcast Network. My name is Chris Blades, and before we get started here today on the show I'm recording this New Year's Eve, so the last show of the decade, I want to just first thank you guys for your support. We wish you guys all a happy New Year, and hopefully many more years to come. And also, if you like what you've heard here from the network, if you like what you've heard here from this episodes in the past, please subscribe to the podcast. Give us a 5-star rating and a review if you could. It's very helpful. It'll continue to help us to get better and improve. And week in and week out, try to give you guys the best content that we can. And speaking of which, as we mentioned on the last episode, Week 17 is done, and of the NFL season that is over. And with that comes Black Monday. If you don't know what the term Black Monday is, it's the term used for the day after the final day of the regular season where coaches, GMs, coordinators, and all the people start to lose their jobs. It's an unfortunate day, but it's a day that comes in every sport, and NFL is no different. So, I mean, there's a lot to unpack, there's a lot to talk about here when it comes to Black Monday. There's teams that have fired their coaches, the teams that haven't fired their coaches yet, or haven't. I guess, well, technically Jason Garrett can't be fired because contract's up. But there's teams like the Cowboys who they don't really know what they're doing yet. But the team I'm going to start off with is the Browns. I mean, a couple episodes back I mentioned Freddie Kitchens was a guy who was possibly coaching for his job this past weekend. And I guess you could say he did not do what he needed to do in order to keep that job, as he was let go of his duties, as was GM John Dorsey. I mean, the situation with Dorsey is a little bit different in that They tried to rework the way the organization was going to be run. Dorsey wasn't having it. From reports that are out there, obviously it's hard to tell what is and isn't true in terms of these negotiations and things like that. But Dorsey did not seem to like the direction in which they were going, in which the ownership wanted the franchise to go in, and he stepped away. So the Browns are a team that's looking for not only a new coach but also a new GM. It seems like they have some ideas in terms of the GM search. They're looking into the VP of Player Personnel, I believe, is his title, Andrew Berry, who is with the Eagles currently, was with the Browns in the past. That's a guy who is Vice President of Football Operations. Excuse me, Andrew Berry is with the Eagles, and he's a guy that used to be with the Browns, and is a guy in many circles that people believe is a very hot GM candidate. So that's one of the options they're looking into. And then on the coaching search, it appears that Matt Rule already ruled them out, which, I mean, if you're seeing the way the Browns have been run, or are being run currently and have been run over the past decade plus since they've been back in Cleveland, you could understand why a guy like Matt Rule, who's going to have a lot of options, doesn't want to be tied to the Browns as his first head coaching gig at the professional level, just because very few people seem to have success there. And also, it just seems to be a situation where the organization isn't that willing to give guys long leeway. I mean, Freddie Kitchens only lasted a year. When coming into the season, people knew he was a guy who had never been a head coach before. He was a position coach not that long ago. So it's partly on the Browns' fault for the situation, just because they put a guy in place that may not have been ready, and they deemed wasn't ready, which is why he was let go. But also from Matt Rule, a guy like Matt Rule's perspective, who is trying to keep his name high and trying to make a name for himself in the league, that position may not be the best one, just because if your first experience doesn't go well, you may not always get that second opportunity. So he's a guy. I mean, they're looking into They're trying to interview, the Browns are Josh McDaniels. They are trying to interview 49ers defensive coordinator Robert Saleh, who heads up one of the best defenses in the league. So it's a very not an obvious choice, but it's a clear choice why the Browns want to be in on him. I mean, McDaniels is from Canton, Ohio, and it seems like that's the guy the owner has him would want. And also, he's coming from obviously he's coming from the New England tree, but in the same mindset of Bill Belichick. He's a guy who has a lot of say over the personnel that's going to be on the 53-man, people they bring in free agency, draft, stuff like that. And I imagine McDaniels would want something like that, so that would make sense if that's a guy who they're going after, why they would have to get rid of Dorsey, because McDaniels going to want to have more say even on who the GM would be, or also just maybe even be in charge of the personnel himself, kind of like Bill O'Brien is, where they fire their GM, and they just haven't hired a new one, just let Bill O'Brien run the show. So I imagine McDaniels is probably looking to do something like that. So I can understand why they might have had to let Dorsey go if that was the situation. So the Browns are one of many teams that are kind of trying to figure things out. The Giants are another team who like I said, Pat Shermer was another guy who was coaching for his job this weekend potentially. They had the Giants competitive for 3 quarters, but then kind of all fell apart. And he's a guy who they gave him 2 seasons, and it was just one of those things where, I mean, their full offensive weapons were never together, so it's kind of hard to judge him when he doesn't have all his pieces. And also, obviously, the defense wasn't good, though. I would imagine he had some say on defensive coordinator James Bettcher, and at least some input on who they may or may not have wanted to bring in. So when you go 9-23 in your first 2 years, it's hard to, and you're a guy who the fan base didn't really inspire confidence from the fan base. It's hard to rationalize bringing him back for another year. Though they decided to keep Dave Gettleman for the time being, which is just interesting because I never understand why the GMs that hire the coaches that get fired don't also lose their job if they don't have any. Clout's not the right word, but if they don't have any. If they don't have a long lineage of excellence with the franchise that they're with, just because, I mean, Gettleman has had some success with the Panthers, but in his time with the Giants, the team hasn't been that good, and that's the team he's put together, and that was the head coach he picked in Pat Shermer, so you have to look at him funny too, just because, like, all right, you guys are tied together, how do we assume that this guy can get the job done but the coach couldn't? So I always find those kind of situations weird, just because I would think they should be tied together. So if you let go of one, you let go of both. It's hard to, if in your eyes the GM didn't get the coach right the first time, what is going to tell you that they're going to be able to get it right the second time? But I mean, I guess we'll have to see. They're trying to let Gettleman's plan play out, so we'll see how, in fact, it does play out. But they're team to keep their eyes on for the next couple of days, just to see where they kind of direction they go. I know back a little while ago they were linked to Jason Garrett in terms of maybe him being a guy they would want to bring in. Obviously, he hasn't officially. I mean, I think his contract's up, but he hasn't. The Cowboys haven't said anything one way or the other on if they're going to keep him or let him go. So maybe they're trying to hold out so that he can't go there. Maybe hoping the Giants hire somebody. But I know Matt Rule, as we talked about with the Browns, is a guy that the Giants want to try to bring in. Josh McDaniels is another one who they want to try to bring in. Wink Martindale, the defensive coordinator for the Ravens, is an interesting name that is circling out there because, again, the Ravens defense, maybe not the top defense, but one of the top 5, top 10 defenses in the league. And so he's a guy. I mean, whenever a team is doing well, they're always going to try to poach coordinators, position coaches from that team. So it's understandable why teams would want to go to the Ravens to try to find some of that success. So he's a guy that could be interesting. And also, it's been reported that he would try to bring in the hot commodity Joe Brady, the passing game coordinator from LSU, with him if he was able to get a head coaching job. So that'd be interesting just to see what Joe Brady could do at the professional level. I mean, obviously he was with the Saints before going to LSU, but as an official offensive coordinator, where he technically isn't even that at LSU, just to see how his offense would translate. And I mean, obviously the Giants have weapons, and if he believes in Daniel Jones and thinks he can develop him, they have some pieces in place to get things going in the right direction. So that'd be interesting. How they're also looking at Eric Bieniemy, the offensive coordinator from the Chiefs. It's another situation where you have a good team, a good offense. You're going to want to take the coaches from that offense, and you can't take Andy Reid. So it's like, all right, we might as well go the second in command. I mean, it happened with Doug Peterson and the Eagles. It happened with Matt Nagy and the Bears. So, and I mean, both those teams, at least, I mean, the Bears kind of took a step back a little bit this year, but they made the playoffs in his first year. So teams have had success going to the Andy Reid tree. So I wouldn't expect it to stop anytime soon. And also, Chris Richard is another name the Giants are looking at, the passing game coordinator / D-backs coach for the Cowboys, who was a hot commodity last year. He decided to stay another year with the Cowboys, and the defense didn't look as good this year, but he's still a guy that many people believe could be a head coach in the very near future. So they have some options out there. Washington is a team that got a head start on their coaching search as they fired Jay Gruden very early in the season. And they already have their new coach in Ron Rivera. They let go of Bruce Allen as well, which is probably almost just as important as letting go of Jay Gruden in terms of Bruce Allen is a guy that had been there for a while and kind of hadn't really had too much success there. So it was like, all right, it's probably time for him to go as well, unfortunately. But you bring in Ron Rivera, bring in a coach that can finally give that franchise some structure, some order, something they've been lacking the past few years with the different coaches that they've had. So, and everybody that played for him seems to rave about him. So I don't see why anything would change with him in Washington. Like, obviously he had success with the Panthers, made it to a Super Bowl. So that's something that Washington is hoping to get back to. So we'll see if Ron Rivera is the guy. And he's also supposedly bringing in Jack Del Rio to be his defensive coordinator, who's been a head coach in the league, but has coached up some very good defenses during his time. So that pairing just is going to be an interesting one because the Washington has some pieces on defense, definitely, and if they end up getting Chase Young, they'll have even more pieces. But it is one of those things where you're going to have to try to see if Jack Del Rio can get all those pieces to work together, work in unison, and get that. I mean, a defense that wasn't that bad. It wasn't the worst defense in the league this year, but it can get it to improve as he's been known to do in his past. So those are just some of the teams. When I come back from this next break, I'll talk about a couple more, and also if I were a coach, which job I would want, just in terms of organization to front office to players on the field, just kind of the kind of job that if I were looking from a perspective of wanting to be a head coach, which teams I would be targeting to try to get an interview with. So we will talk about that right after this break.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
GSMC Sports Podcast, by GSMC Podcast Network. So we talked about the Browns, the Giants, Washington in the last segment. Another thing we have to get to is the Cowboys in terms of, as of this moment right now, obviously by the time you hear this, news may change. So we'll see how that goes. But they've had 2 meetings, I believe, the past 2 days, Monday and Tuesday, that is, with Jason Garrett in terms of his future with the team, and no real news has come out of that yet. Like I said, obviously we're kind of just waiting to see if anything changes in that regard, but he's a guy that has been there for 10 years, including, if you include the 1 year he took over for Wade Phillips halfway through, and they've had regular season success with him, but he hasn't been able to take them to that next step in terms of getting back to the NFC Championship game, getting to a Super Bowl, winning a Super Bowl. Obviously, that's what the Cowboys are known for, their Super Bowl success. And they just haven't had that in the past. And since I think they haven't won a Super Bowl in 25 years, let alone been to an NFC Championship game. So they're trying to find somebody to get them back to that level, especially when you look around and you have the Eagles in your own division who won the Super Bowl a couple years ago. The Giants have won 2 in the last 15 years. So you kind of keep up with that. And unfortunately, the Cowboys are falling behind in terms of having that level of success. So they're trying to find somebody that can get them there. And Jerry Jones may still think that's Jason Garrett, and I could understand why he would. I mean, he's been there for a while. He's a guy that you can work well with. He's shown he can be a good coach in terms of regular season success, like I said, in the past. So it's kind of a situation where Jerry just might not want to get rid of him, which, I mean, if they decide to do that and run it back with Jason Garrett, I mean, I personally believe that would be a mistake just because we've seen what Jason Garrett can do. We know what he can do with this team. We know how far he can take this team. And unless Jerry is just happy with that and thinks that's good enough and just thinks, all right, maybe 1 year they can finally get over that hump, Jason can be the guy to bring him there, then I don't see why you would keep him. Just like I said, he's been there for 10 years. He's won 2 playoff games. They've only been they haven't been past the divisional round in his 10 years, so it's just like, why? At a certain point, you gotta want to be able to take that leap. It's kind of a different sport, but similar concept to what the Warriors did with Mark Jackson in terms of, obviously he had some issues within the organization that also led to his dismissal, but he was a guy that developed the talent, got them good, but they just weren't good enough. And a guy like Steve Kerr comes in, and then the next year, they're winning finals, winning one of the best teams in recent NBA memory. So it's just like maybe a change will be good for them in terms of just a fresh voice, fresh ideas, a different perspective that could be good for the organization in terms of getting them back to where they want to be. Because, like I said, I imagine getting to the divisional round shouldn't be good enough, and I don't think it would be good enough if I were an owner. So I don't see why Jerry, who's been a guy who's had success in the past, obviously has been a part of Super Bowl teams as an owner, and I know he wants that level of success. So I just don't know if Jason Garrett's the guy to bring them to that. But like I said, we'll see. Jerry does what he wants to do. He's not going to listen to anybody else. So if that's what he wants to keep Jason Garrett, and Jason Garrett's going to stay around. I'm sorry to tell you that if you're a Cowboys fan out there that is hoping to get him out of there, but like I said, Jerry does what he wants. So if Jerry wants him to stay, he's going to stay. And just hopefully for you guys, he can get you guys over the hump. Another team that hasn't let go of their head coach yet is the Jacksonville Jaguars. They decided to keep Doug Marrone for another year at least, as well as their GM Dave Caldwell. And I guess I'll do them and the Falcons together because both of those teams were teams that have disappointed based on the success they had a couple years ago and have just taken steps back since then. But they played well enough at the end of the season to keep their head coach around, and in those kind of situations very rarely, in my opinion, work out in terms of if you see a guy and you believe he should be fired like halfway through the year, but then they get it together towards the end, very rarely does that coach then very rarely does the coach then go on that next year and pick back up where he left off. Kind of just one of the examples I have is just Andy Reid a couple years ago, the year before he ended up getting fired. That the Eagles were 4-8 through 12 games. They finish off 8-8. Everyone's like, "Oh, okay, give Andy one more year. He's been there for a while. He's had success there. Okay, we'll give him another shot." The front office, the organization decided to give him another shot. And the next year was just as bad, if none, it was actually worse. So then they had to let him go. So it's just one of those things where you can't let a late season hot streak cloud your judgment on. If you've seen enough and you believe that a guy isn't going to be able to take you to that next level, then you have to be willing to part ways. Just because buying another year is kind of how you get stuck with the Jason Garrett situation. Is in terms of Jason Garrett last year they got to division round, weren't able to make it through. People were like, all right, this is probably as far as they can go. They decided to give him another year, and then he was a lame dunk. He only had 1 year left on his deal, and then the team goes 8-8 and misses the playoffs, and arguably one of the worst divisions in NFL history, but definitely the worst division in football this year. So if you're looking at it from that perspective, it's like if you can't win that division, then if you can't win that division this year, then when are you going to win it, kind of thing. So I don't necessarily agree, but I understand why both Jacksonville and Atlanta decided to keep their respective coaches, just because finding a new coach is hard. I mean, there's only 32 of these jobs for a reason, and if you have one that you think is good, it's better to have someone you know than someone you don't know. In terms of, like, you know what to expect, you know how the team's going to play, you know how they're going to perform more or less year in and year out, and that's better, and especially with the guy that's had success with that franchise, that's better off than I'm trying to find the next new hot commodity and hoping it works out. So I understand why they did it, but it's just that I think both of those fan bases were, at least from social media, it seems like they were ready to move on, but they're gonna have to wait out another year. And lastly, the Panthers, they were a team who, again, they go over on Vera a little while ago, so they had a jump start on the coaching search, but they haven't really come to any decisions yet. But they're interviewing guys like Mike McCarthy, who's been out of football this year, but obviously had success in the past with the Packers. And, I mean, when you have one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, it's hard, in my opinion, it'd be hard not to have success. But, I mean, he's still a good coach, so we'll be able to see what he can do there. But, yeah, they're asking, again, Matt Rule is another name that's been brought up. Josh McDaniels is another name that's been brought up. A lot of these guys, a lot of the hot names are hot names for a reason, so everybody's going to want to try to get them and hope that they can work out with their team. I'm speaking on working out. As I said, I was going to touch on some of the teams that if I'm a coach, I'd be looking at, or if I were a coaching candidate, I'd be looking at. And the first one I would have my eyes on, that's currently open, because, I mean, the Cowboys would be, actually, I don't want to say that, because the Cowboys would be like my number 2 and number 3, just because I would have to talk to Jerry about how much input he's going to continue to have, in terms of he's doing interviews after the game, he's doing interviews during the week of the game, he's talking a lot, and it's like it's hard to be a coach that way when the owner is the face of the franchise. So it's hard to, like, the players don't know, like, should I go to the coach with an issue, should I go to the owner / GM with an issue? So the Cowboys, as surprising as that is, with all the talent they have, would be a little further down the list just because of the Jerry Jones factor. But the team I would actually have my eyes on, if I were coaching, they were either A, going to give me personnel control, or B, we're going to allow me to have input on the GM. I actually would take a look at the Browns, just because, I mean, I know John Joyce is out of there, but they got some talented pieces around. They have talent on the offense, they have talent on the defense. The only thing really they need to shore up is that offensive line, because, I mean, Baker was getting killed back there for most of the season. And if I'm a guy that believes in Baker, and I feel like I can fix some of his turnover issues, some of his accuracy issues that he had this year that he hadn't, I mean, threw a good amount of interceptions as a rookie too, but I mean, he's a rookie, so that's not that shocking. But the biggest thing for him was his accuracy dipped down by a lot, and he was statistically one of the worst quarterbacks in the league this year. So if I'm a guy that thinks I can fix that, I would look at the Browns, just because if you win, I mean, the issue with Freddie Kitchens this year, because they won, I mean, they weren't that much worse than they have been in the past, which is because of the expectations. Like, had they not come in with playoff caliber expectations, Freddie Kitchens still has a job, because I think they finished 6-10. I'll get back to you guys on that. But it was just the issue with the Browns was that they just had those high expectations, because they bring in OBJ, they sign Kareem Hunt, they have Nick Chubb back, Myles Garrett, they get Denzel Ward, they had Denzel Ward last year, they draft Greedy Williams. So it was one of those situations where, yeah, they were 6-10. So again, that's better than when they went 0-16 not that long ago. So I mean, in that regard, they're going up. But because of the playoff expectations, it was it's hard for you to keep a guy that when you're supposed to go to the playoffs, and then you end up going 6-10 with all that talent. It's like I said, it's a tough situation. So I understood why he got out of there, but like I'm saying, they have talent on the roster, and again, if you come in and do a good job there, then people will believe you can do a good job anywhere. It's kind of like the Baker thing. Baker wanted to be the quarterback of the Browns just to show people that, hey, if you would just get them to the playoffs, you're a legend in Cleveland forever. Just because they don't, unfortunately, their sports town doesn't win that many championships. So if you can even just get them to the playoffs, you're a legend. So that's the kind of job where if I'm a guy that's not afraid to take risks, I would be looking at that one just because that's a position where if I have success there, then people will love me and I'd be revered forever, especially in Cleveland, but just across the league, just because no one's really had success there since they moved back to Cleveland. So just to be that first guy to kind of give them some success and some stability at that position, I mean, my name will be marked in the history books for forever. And also another team that I'd be looking at is actually the Giants. I mean, unfortunately, I don't have that high of an opinion on Gettleman, though. Like I said, he's had success in the past, so I'm not going to disparage him. But he's a guy that I would, if I were the Giants, I would hope I could have been able to hire a new GM. But they're another team that has a lot of offensive talent. I mean, you got Daniel Jones, who is one of the 2 or 3 best rookie quarterbacks in the league. Well, definitely top 3, but just 1, 2, and 3 between him, Kyler, and Minshew. Just it depends on who you ask. But you have Saquon, who's at worst a top 10 back in the league. If you go out and find another receiver to complement Slayton and Shepard and Golden Tate, and you can shore up that offensive line, then you got something there on offense to at least be one of the more high-powered offenses in the league. And then you just got to work on bringing in a good defensive coordinator to get the defense right. I mean, you got a lot of young players who played this year from at all levels, D-line, linebacker, secondary. So hopefully another year, with a year under their belt, they'll continue to get better. And it's a situation where it's New York, it's the bright lights. If you can make it there, you can make it anywhere, as the saying has been. So it's another situation where if you can be the guy to come in and bring stability to that coaching position, which they haven't had. I mean, they've had, 3 coaches in the past, 5-6 years. So if you can be that guy to kind of get in, get Daniel Jones right, maybe help fix up his fumbling issues, and get him together and get him to continue to improve and take strides like he has this season, I mean, you're another guy who's going to be looked at and revered. And because, I mean, like I said, New York, I mean, the Giants have won more than the Giants and Yankees are the 2 teams, but when it comes to when you're in a town with the Knicks and the Mets and the Jets, being any level successful, it is great. Just because, I mean, New York, I mean, they've fallen in love with different players for different reasons, and if you can be successful there, then I mean, you're a legend forever in whatever sport, and definitely in the NFL, and one of the most storied franchises in the history of the league. If you can be successful there for a coach, I mean, you'll have it made. So those are my 2. As surprising as it is, the Browns and the Giants. If I'm a coach, those are the guys I'm looking at. Because I mean, like I said, the Panthers. I mean, I don't know what to do with Cam. He's kind of, I don't know, if he's going to ever be healthy again. And then if he's not, then now I need to get a new quarterback. And I mean, at least I'll be able to get my guy. But that's a difficult situation. And then, like I said, the Cowboys. We don't even know if there'll be an opening there, but they're a team where Jerry is, until Jerry says he doesn't run the show, he runs the show, and I mean that's hard to handle as a coach where you don't feel as if you have that much say. So if I'm a coach, probably Giants first, just because organizationally they have a little bit more structure there. But Giants and the Browns, those would be the 2 that I'd be looking at if I were a head coach looking to take over. But yeah, no, I mean we'll see how these play out. I mean these are developing situations, so we'll be talking more and more about this throughout the coming days, weeks, months, however long it draws out. But it'll be interesting to see how it all shakes out, where everybody ends up going, what ends up happening with all these positions, and how they get filled, who they get filled with, all the situations. See if we have another, hopefully not with Josh McDaniels, but another Josh McDaniels situation in where someone backs out of a job after agreeing to it, and then we end up getting a coach who may have worked out better. And Frank Reich for the Colts, obviously, the Colts didn't have as much success as they wanted this year due to the Andrew Luck situation. But I think if you ask them or any Colts fan, they're probably happy with ending up with Frank Reich. So we'll just see how it all shakes out, and that'll be very interesting. But after this break, we're going to jump over to college football because there are some New Year's Six bowl games that we got to touch on. There was one good one yes, there's going to be some good ones on New Year's Day when you're listening to this, so we got to talk about those, and we'll talk about them right after this break.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
And we are back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast. So the game I wanted to touch on was the game from Monday, UVA, Florida, Orange Bowl. I mean, when I previewed this game on the Monday pod that you guys listened to, I said that I thought UVA was going to struggle because much like Clemson, Florida's going to have bigger guys, faster guys, stronger guys, and I don't say to my surprise because I mean they're top 25 teams. So UVA is good, but I was impressed by how well and for how long UVA was able to hang in there with a team that on paper you may think is superior to them. But I mean UVA. I mean when you have a senior quarterback and Bryce Perkins playing in his last game, they weren't going to go out without a fight, and I'm just glad they did because it provided us with a pretty good football game. I mean. It started out. It looked like it was going to be bad because within the first 40 seconds, Michael P. Ryan for Florida runs in for a touchdown. And you're like, oh Lord, is UVA going to get run off the field? And they did not. They were able to answer back with a touchdown of their own. They were able to answer back with a nice touchdown pass from Bryce Perkins after an interception by Kyle Trask. And then from there, it was pretty back and forth. I mean, Florida goes down. After UVA touchdown, Michael P. Ryan scored another touchdown, this time through the air on a nice little 15, 16-yard touchdown catch and run. And then Bryce Perkins, again, comes back down the field, leads the UVA on another touchdown drive. This one, I'm pretty sure this was the one where, he was running for his life at different times all night, but he made a great throw to the back of the end zone on this one. I'm pretty sure that was a touchdown. And, it was a great catch. It was a great catch by the receiver, Dubois, I believe is how his name. Yeah, Dubois is how his name is pronounced. But that was great. So then I'm saying it's going back and forth. I mean, Florida's able to extend the lead a little bit, push it to 10 by the end of the half, I was like, all right, okay, so maybe Florida will be able to extend that lead over in the second half, and then it kind of started out, and teams were good defenses. Both defenses were playing better. They were forced punts on the first 5 drives, 3 for UVA, 2 for Florida the second half. So it was definitely a tight game. Then Florida's able to go down and get a field goal. Virginia comes down, answers right back with a touchdown. Another touchdown pass from Perkins, who had 300 yards and 4 touchdowns in this game. The first quarterback to do that. I mean, not only against Florida this season, Joe Burrow didn't even do that, and we've seen what Joe Burrow can do against good teams, but I believe in the last 45 games they hadn't given up 300 yards or 4 touchdowns, and Bryce Perkins was the guy to do it. And he played sensational. He was a guy who's been great. He's been great all season, because obviously it was the last game, so you knew he was going to go out fighting. And because of that, he provided us with an entertaining game. Unfortunately, it wasn't enough, as Florida was eventually able to score another touchdown to put them up 12. This time, Kyle Trask able to run it in, and then they got an interception on the next drive, and then they kicked the field goal, and that was it. I don't want to say that was it, because technically Virginia scored with like 30 seconds left, so they had a chance at the onside kick, and they just didn't get it. And then obviously the Florida was able to take a knee from there. But like I said, the final score ended up being 36-28, and that was about, like I said, it's all you can ask for in terms of when you get these New Year's Six, these high caliber bowl games. You just want entertaining games. You don't want blowouts, and that's definitely not what we got in this one. And that's, like I said, that's really all you can ask for. And it was a great win for Florida just because they've won back-to-back New Year's Six games. Dan Mullen is coming in. I don't say turn that program around just because they've had a lot of success in the past, but they had kind of fallen off a little bit after Urban Meyer had left, and he was able to come back, right the ship, and get them back on that Florida standard where they're excellent and they're competing for national championships and SEC championships. So I'm happy for Dan Mullen. He's a guy who may be another guy who could be in another year or two, maybe a dark horse NFL coaching candidate. We'll see what happens with him. But I mean, the job he's done at Florida so far, at least, has been great from where they were. Not only, especially like 2 years ago when he first took the job. Michael Piron was talking about it after the game, how they were I believe they were like 4-7. And they were struggling his sophomore year, and then obviously he by the time Dan Mullen comes in 2 years later, they're winning back-to-back New Year's Six games. So that's great. And obviously it was good for Michael Piron to have his career day in the last game of his career. So that was a good one. We got a couple more New Year's Six bowls on New Year's Day, which you guys may be watching before or after you listen to this. But the first one I want to touch on is the Rose Bowl game, which I think is going to be another good one, Oregon and Wisconsin, because both of these defenses have been very good, and it's going to be important to see like whose offense can do more. I mean, Oregon just faced a very tough offense. I mean, both teams faced tough opponents, but Oregon just faced a very tough run defense in Utah and just ran through them. I mean, C.J. Verdell had 200 yards. Yeah, C.J. Verdell had 200 yards and 3 touchdowns in the Pac-12 championship game. And that's the thing is, if as surprising as it is, because Oregon has always been, in the eyes of many people, a more finesse kind of team. If they're able to run the ball, I mean, they want to be able to run the ball well. So if they can do that and they can dominate in that way, then they're going to be a team that's going to be tough to beat, because then you can play action off that, you can roll out, do all the stuff that Oregon wants to do. And I mean, they have one of, if not the best offensive lines in football, 4 seniors, and Penei Sewell, who is arguably the best offensive lineman in the country as a sophomore. So it's going to be tough for that. It's going to be tough for that Wisconsin front to be able to get pressure on Herbert and also to stop that run. But if they can, then they're going to have a chance, because they have their own really good running back in their own right, Jonathan Taylor, who's trying to go from back-to-back for 3,000-yard seasons to potentially end his career. I mean, he's a guy who could leave early. Many people believe he will leave early, so there could be a lot of people on this field that could be playing their last games in terms of high caliber prospects, whether it's Justin Herbert, who people believe could be, depending on if Tua decides he wants to leave, and depending on how bad his injury is, could be the second quarterback off the board. Jonathan Taylor, who could very well be the first running back off the board, depending on who you ask, who you talk to. Everybody's opinion for the best running back coming out may be different. So he's a guy that could be the top running back off the board. And like I said, Oregon's got 4 senior linemen. They got a senior linebacker in Troy Dye. There's going to be a lot of players who are playing in the last game, so you know this game is going to mean a lot to them. Especially, it's a Rose Bowl game. It's one of the marquee bowl games every year, so you're going to have a lot of eyes on you. So you want to come in and show out in a game like this. And I think both teams will try to do that. This isn't going to be one of those games where teams may not take it as seriously just because it's not the national championship. It's not a college football playoff semifinal game. Now, this game's going to mean a lot to both of these teams, I believe. So that's why I believe it should be good. And I think it's going to come down to who can establish the run more and who can get pressure. Because both of these guys, whether it's Kayvon Thibodeau for Oregon, who's a freshman and already has who leads Oregon in sacks, has 6.5 in his last 5 games, was dominant in that Pac-12 championship game against Utah, or it's a guy like Zach Bond for Wisconsin, who's a very, maybe not the athletic freak that Thibodeau is, but has had a very solid career and is a very good pass rusher. So he's going to be a guy that is going to, he's going to probably see a lot of Sewell. So, and I mean, that's going to be a tough matchup. But if he can win some of that, then that'd be a good look for him in terms of his prospects for Sundays in the NFL. Because, I mean, the Sewell is going to be a guy that could very well be a top 5 pick next year, assuming he's healthy. So, like I said, that's going to be a good one. We also got Baylor and Georgia, who I will touch on right after this break.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
And we are back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast. Like I said, I was going to talk about the last New Year's Six Bowl game, the Sugar Bowl, against Baylor in Georgia. Georgia's in the Sugar Bowl for back-to-back years. I mean, this will be interesting to see how they handle that. I mean, they already kind of know what to expect. And this is a game with much like the Wisconsin game, there's going to be a lot of people potentially playing there in their last games. Is this the last game Matt Rule coaches at Baylor? This is the last game Matt Rule coaches in college football, period, potentially. If he gets a head coaching job, I mean, I believe he said earlier this week that he would be foolish not to at least listen. I mean, not to say that he is going to leave, per se, but he's been a guy that's taken Baylor from almost basically getting the death penalty as a university and as a team because of the stuff that happened under Art Browse, and understandably so. I understood why, with all the allegations and reports and situations that came out of that program at the time. I can understand why people wanted to give him the death penalty, but Matt Rule took the job, and he's taken a team who started 1-11, now they're 11-2. Just 2 years apart. I mean, that kind of turnaround is unprecedented. I mean, no one, very, very few people were even willing to take this job, let alone turn it around in the degree and in the manner in which Matt Rule has. So it'll be interesting to see if he's is he coaching in his last game? Is Jake Fromm and DeAndre Swift potentially playing in their last game? I mean, they already have a couple guys sitting out on the offensive line, and Andrew Thomas and Isaiah Wilson, who people believe could. I mean, Thomas is definitely one of if not the top tackle coming in. Wilson's another guy who could very well be playing on Sundays. They know they also have their right guard out, so it'd be interesting to see how that line holds up, because they're going to have 3 new starters in this game, and see how they're able to handle the Baylor defense, who, though it's a Pac-12 defense, so many people like to talk down on that. They're not actually not a bad defense. They haven't been a bad defense this year. They have a guy in James Lynch who was great against Oklahoma, had 2 sacks, and has been their best pass rusher. So going up against, obviously Georgia's a program that has 4- and 5-star recruits waiting in the wing, much like Alabama, Clemson, those type of teams where they always have excellent guys on their bench. But it'd just be interesting to see how with them being thrust into game action for the first time, how they stand up to a guy in Lynch who's been very good this season. Is probably going to. Because obviously they really haven't played that much in games. These new tackles and the new guard haven't played that much in games. They've only gone against the Georgia defense in practice, just to see potentially could be the best pass rushers they've seen since their high school days. So it'll be interesting to see how they hold up there. But yeah, that game is going to be a good one, just to see how, I guess in a different regard to Oregon and Wisconsin, where I said that those teams are definitely going to take this serious. Just see how seriously do these teams take it? Just like from Matt Rule's perspective, is he already starting to check out? Is Jake Fromm already checked out because of some of his linemen checked out? Is DeAndre Swift checked out in terms of you see some bowl games where you see guys going all out, and you see some bowl games where guys like go out in the beginning and then they kind of just like rest it out because they make it through the first half healthy, and then it's like, all right, I'm good. I've had a good first half. You kind of don't worry about. I mean, that happened in I forget what bowl game it was, but when Kentucky played Penn State last year, Josh Allen and Benny Snell, those were two guys who had NFL aspirations. Obviously, Josh Allen went a lot further ahead than Benny Snell did, but they were guys who didn't play that much in the second half because they were so dominant in the first half, but then they ended up coming back in because they wanted to win the game. So kind of to see how both these two teams play it. As like I said, it's a New Year's Six game. It's a big game, so they're not going to take it lightly. But it's just, you're always a little afraid in the bowl games that quote unquote don't mean as much, just to see who's really going to be out there giving it all and who's really going to be out there just to try to make sure I can make it through this game. Let me get through this game. Let me be healthy. Let me get to so I can start my pre-draft stuff. And that's why, like I said, as I talked about on this podcast already, why some people sit out, and I understand completely why they do, just because you don't ever want to see a guy get hurt in his last game of his career, and that potentially hurt him in what he could have become on Sunday, just because now he's, instead of having to train, he's having to rehab and get surgery and all that stuff, and no one wants that for anybody. So I hope we don't see any of that on Wednesday, New Year's Day, and when these bowl games. But aside from the New Year's Six bowl games, there's still two other very good bowl games in my opinion, in the Citrus Bowl with Michigan and Alabama, and this is going to be another game just to see how hard do these guys take it, because obviously, I mean, Alabama, Michigan, they both want to win, they both want to make a statement. I mean, Harbaugh is still looking for his, quote, signature win, and I mean, obviously, a bowl game victory over Alabama is a big deal, whether it's against Tua or not against Tua. You're playing Alabama, you're playing Nick Saban, you have guys like Josh Gaddis, who's the offensive coordinator at Michigan, who used to be at Alabama. You have a guy in Shea Patterson, who played in the SEC before transferring to Michigan, so all those guys are going to try to get a big signature win to end their season against Alabama. And I mean, Alabama already has a couple guys sitting out in Terrell Lewis, linebacker, edge rusher kind of guy, and Trayvon Diggs, a cornerback, both guys with NFL aspirations. But it sounds like they're going to have their trio of receivers, Henry Ruggs, Jerry Jeudy, and Devontae Smith, all going to play. So that in and of itself will be worth the price of admission, in my opinion, just because you get to see three guys who are all going to have futures in the NFL, three guys who could very well all go in the first round, depending on how this draft, the combine and all that stuff, pro days, those workouts kind of shake out. Though you're looking at guys who are going to be playing in the NFL very soon, so that in my opinion is enough to be worth tuning into the game. Let alone if defensive guys don't play, either doesn't matter. We'll just get a more high scoring game, which I mean most people aren't that mad at. So I think that'll be interesting. Like I said, Shea Patterson's last game of his career, he's going to want to go out with a bang. And I mean, obviously, you'd never want to lose your last game of your career, so it'd be nice for him to go out with a bang, go out against the team that he has some knowledge of, who's played before, who he's familiar with to a degree, and like I said, they have a guy who used to be on the Alabama staff, so if there's a team that may have more insight against Alabama than most other teams would have in a bowl game, it should be this Michigan team. So that'd be interesting to see. That'll be a good one, I believe. And even like on the Michigan side, you have a couple guys in a corner, Lavert Hill, and linebacker Khaleke Hudson, who are guys that have aspirations of playing on Sunday. So this is a good test, because I mean, even without Tua, they still are a great offense, especially if all the receivers play. With Najee Harris playing, like they're a great offense. So this will be a good test for them, just to see where they kind of stack up against guys who you're going to be playing against in terms of caliber in the near future if they make it to the NFL. So this is another one. And the last game to wrap it up is the Auburn-Minnesota game, the Outback Bowl. Both these teams are coming to the game with new offensive coordinators. The old offensive coordinator left to go to Penn State, and I forget. Oh man, I forgot where the Auburn offensive coordinator left to go to. But like I said, they both he went to Florida State. That's what it was. He left to go take the offensive coaching job or offensive coordinator job or offensive coaching job over at Florida State. So both those guys are coming in. So this will be good in terms of just a tune-up for the future, in terms of like what these offenses are going to look like next year, perhaps, just to see, just get a jump start on that. Maybe get in some younger guys, see how they hold up, see how they do in a big game against a good opponent, and see kind of like where you can be like, all right, we like this from the offense in this game. We didn't like this, so let's try to tweak that kind of thing. Just testing out the waters, testing out the guys as play callers. See if they're going to be ready to step up, and see if they're ready for prime time. Basically, just see if they're ready to step up and take and control those mantles as the offensive play callers in the next season. But even outside of that, you have guys on both sides who are very entertaining to watch. You have Derek Brown, an interior defensive lineman, who's one of, if not the best interior defensive lineman coming out this year in college football. So he's, I mean, any Auburn game that I ever watch, I always try to keep a close eye on him because he's just dominant up there. And then and Marlon Davis is another guy who's an edge rusher who's not as good as Derek Brown. Obviously, Derek Brown gets a lot of the accolades and the acclaim, but he's good in his own right. So it'll be interesting to see how they decide how they play their last game of the season, how they look. And then also you have Bo Nix, who's a freshman who's had a great freshman year, won some big games, lost some close games, but he's played well. So you want to be him to be able to finish out on a high note and ride off with the confidence heading into spring practices and the spring game and into the next season, feeling good about himself. So for a young guy like this game is important for him, just so you can have that confidence and have that good feeling going forward into the next season. And then from the other side, I mean, the Minnesota, they're a team that has played, who was a bit of a surprise this year in terms of how good they did, but they played tough. They played good teams. They've played in close games. Their passing attack, which again we'll see how it looks without the new offensive coordinator. But the passing attack's been great. They have two great outside receivers in Bateman and Tyler Johnson. They have a very good quarterback who's very good at distributing the ball, getting them the ball. They have a good running back. So it'll be interesting to see how they hold up against an SEC front in terms of, like, obviously this is not the type of opponent they're used to playing. So it'll be interesting to see just how they can handle that, how their receivers handle the speed on the outside. I mean, they've been great all year, so I don't expect them to slow down now. But just to see how their offensive line handles guys like Derek Brown and Marlon Davidson, just because those are some of those may very, very well be the best guys they face this year. Well, I mean, they didn't face Chase Young. No, but they faced Wisconsin, so that's a good front too. But and they faced some good guys on that Penn State line. They held up pretty well. So just to see this was a good game just to see looking ahead into the future, into two teams that could very well be making some noise in their respective conferences in the next year or so. So yeah, I think, like I said, this is going to be another good one. College football, they have a great slate on New Year's Day. I would advise you to sit on if you're not doing anything, sit on your couch, watch the games. I know I'm gonna try to catch all the games if I can. Just because, like I said, they're all great. They all should be entertaining in different ways. And I mean, it's just college football. I mean, who doesn't like college football? So I think a lot of these teams in these games are going to put up quite the fight. And speaking of fight, if you're a fan of boxing, if you're a fan of combat sports, if you're just a fan of the heavyweight division, especially the heavyweight division in boxing as a whole, you got some very exciting news this weekend. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, we will talk about that news right after the break.
Are you looking to get your college football fix? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? The GSMC College Football Podcast is your ticket to all things college football. Join us as we talk college football from the national championship, the college rivalries, the bowl game, to the Heisman Trophy. To which conference is the best? We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, the Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between. Download the GSMC College Football Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
We are back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast. So the news that I'm talking about is it was announced, it is official, the rematch, for if you're a fan of boxing, the rematch you've been waiting to be announced, the rematch we've all been waiting for since the first fight, Deontay Wilder, Tyson Fury, round 2, going down February 22nd in Vegas. It was officially announced. Their first fight happened in 2018. It was a controversial finish because it ended in a draw, and obviously boxing is a sport where draws happen, and you worry, and you so you know it's always a possibility whenever you're watching a fight. But I mean, obviously, no one wants to see a draw because you clearly don't have a winner, so you kind of can't say who won or who lost, and it's hard to argue that, because at least normally you come to some sort of resolution in terms of like win or loss. In most other sports, so boxing is one of the few where that can happen, and that is what happened, and that was very controversial because many people believe that Fury had done enough throughout the fight to win it, though, like I said, he was only given the win on one scorecard. Wilder was given the win on another scorecard, and the third scorecard ended in a draw, which was interesting to me, but whatever. Like I said, many people believe Fury had done enough throughout the fight to win it, and then also you had the 2 knockdowns from Wilder. The last one in the 12th round, where it looked like it was the hit you had been waiting all fight for. Just in terms of you were wondering when is Wilder going to land that one punch that just knocks him clean out, and then it's done, because that's basically what he had done to everybody else he had fought. And obviously Tyson Fury is better than all the other guys he fought up until this point, and I mean he's arguably the best heavyweight between himself, Wilder, and Anthony Joshua. Those are the cream of the crop in terms of the heavyweight division. But it was that you were just wondering if Wilder was ever going to land that right. He did. Or land that one punch. He did. And then you have controversy in that in terms of many people. If you were a guy who was thinking and thought and wanted and was rooting for Wilder to win, you were like, all right, the ref gave him a long 10 count. And if you're a guy that was rooting for Tyson Fury, you just think, it was right. He did what he had to do. Tyson Fury got up. I mean, if you get up, you get up. I mean, there's nothing more to say about it. I mean, I was a guy who, I didn't have a dog in the fight, obviously, but I thought this count started a little slow. But I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, Tyson Fury, it was like the bell sounded, he woke up like he was the Undertaker. I mean, it was still one of the funniest. It was one of the funniest things on social media when it happened. Just all the memes and stuff that had come from him just like laying up, and it was just so shocking, because in the moment you were just like, oh wow, you thought that was the one that was going to end the fight, was going to give Wilder the win. It was the one he had been waiting for. He thought he had won it. Everyone in the stands thought he had won it, but then nope, Tyson Fury was like, not so fast, my friend. And he was able to rise once again and was able to get up and finish out the fight, and then obviously ended in a draw. So, and now we're here. Now we are here. This is a fight that I know both of them. I mean, they're both excellent trash talkers, so the lead up to this fight will probably be just as, if not more, entertaining than it was in the first fight, because both of these guys know how to sell a fight, and that's almost as important as knowing as being a good boxer, just because if people don't want to see you fight, then you're not going to get the kind of fights that you want and that people are going to want to pay to see. And obviously this is a big one because Fox and ESPN are teaming up to co-produce the pay-per-view, so you know that the sports, you know that people think this is going to be a big one, you know it's going to be a good one, and at the very least you should get a winner. You can hope. I mean, obviously there's a chance it still ends in a tie, but you would think you're going to get a winner from this one. So in that regard, I can understand why Fox, ESPN, two of the biggest sports broadcasting networks in the world, would want to be a part of that and have their hand in filming the pay-per-view and all the lead up and all the post stuff. So I completely understand. If I were them, I would try to get on that money too. There's a chance that this may very well be the biggest fight of 2020. So, and like I said, this is one of the most anticipated rematches. And I mean, I'm not a boxing aficionado, but in my mind and in recent memory, at least it's the last 15, 20 years, probably the biggest rematch that we've had. One of the biggest fights overall that people have been asking for, been wanting. So in that regard, it's gonna, it should be, like I said, it should be a good one. It's just like you just hope this time that there can at least you have however it comes, whether it's knockout, TKO, goes the distance, split decision, unanimous, however it goes, you're hoping that at least this one we can get a resolution, because you can't have two ties, in my opinion. And then if you get a resolution, then you have a chance for even a third fight. If whoever lost, if they win, if they lose in a way where like it goes the full 12 rounds, it's a split decision, the one guy can still feel like he won, and then like boom, third fight, money, everybody's happy, everyone's going to be tuned back in, assuming it's a good fight, which I think, like I said, it will be. Both these guys seem to have enough respect for each other. They're gonna take it seriously, and enough disdain for each other where they're going to try to knock the other guy out. And I mean, obviously, this is a combat sport. It's a sport where violence is important, so that's definitely a key part of it. But it's going to be a fight where people, I mean, everyone, not everyone, obviously, is going to be tuned in. But if you're a fan of boxing, if you're just a fan of entertainment, because I think it's going to be a very entertaining fight. Because the first one was entertaining, so I would hope that this one wouldn't disappoint either. It's going to be going in, like I said, like I talked about, with Anthony Joshua being the other big name in the heavyweight division. I mean, then it sets up the winner. The winner has two different options. He can either go get the part 3 of this complete, finish it off as a trilogy, though. That could get interesting, because if the person, so say Wilder's able to land that right and knock Fury out, if they decide to do a part 3, like say it happens in the 12th round again, or even say, nah, I won't use a knockout, because then maybe Wilder won't want to do that. But say it's like a split decision, it goes the distance, Wilder wins. Then he has the option to where he can either take Fury again for a third fight if he wants to, or he can have Anthony Joshua to take on. So like I said, this fight is going to lead to potential fights for both the winner and the loser. So I mean, like I said, I completely understand why people are so adamant to have this fight go down, and why both sides of this would want the fight to go down, because there's so many different avenues from just a pure boxing standpoint. There's so many different avenues from the aspect of the boxers themselves in terms of where this fight can take you. I mean, it can propel you into stardom, even bigger stardom. I mean, obviously these are two of the most well-known guys in boxing overall. So I mean, they can even propel them into even bigger stardom if the fight's good, and then from there they can either be one of the few to have like a very good trilogy in terms of boxing matches, or like you said, they can go and you can take on Anthony Joshua, and bada bing bada boom, that's another big money fight that people are going to want to watch. And then that's the same thing. It could be just like this, where you can have a part 2, you can have a rematch, you can have a part 3 potentially, if the first 2 fights are good and they get split. I mean, there's just so many different avenues where things can go from this fight. So this is one I will be looking forward to. I will be tuned in for. I would advise you, if you're a fan of boxing, like I said, even if you're not a fan of boxing, you're just a fan of competitive sports, you're a fan of entertainment, these two are going to be entertaining. All the trash talk leading up to the fight is going to be entertaining. All the trash talk post the fight, whether it's post interviews on social media, everything from is going to be entertaining. So this is something that I know I'm not going to miss, and I would advise you not to miss, just because I think this is going to be one of the more noteworthy, or has a chance to be. I don't want to flat out say it will be, but it has a chance to be one of the most noteworthy sporting events of the beginning, at least, of the new decade. So I would advise you to copy pay-per-view if you can. If you don't want to pay for it, then just find some friends. You can have a watch party, you can go out to a bar, you can do whatever. But like I said, I would do everything I could to try not to miss this fight, because it's going to be a good one. And speaking of the decade is by the time you guys are listening to this, the decade will be over. So in my next segment, I'm going to want to recap some of my favorite moments in sports in the past decade. Obviously, everybody's list is going to be a little bit different. Everybody likes different things. You like different teams, so what I say may not be some of your favorite moments, and I'm not trying to have it as like a top 10 list or whatever in terms of these are the best moments of the decade, because that's, again, all subjective. So these are just some of my personal favorites, and we will get to those after this break. I'll give you time to think about some of your favorites, and we'll see if we have similar lists. Like I said, we'll get to that right after this break.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC, Invicta FC, Bellator, and one championship. We got the fights covered. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts. Past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
And we are back here again on the GSMC Sports Podcast, presented by GSMC Podcast. So as I said, I'm going to run through some of my favorite sporting moments of the decade, not necessarily games or teams or whatever, but just moments. So that could be anything from a series to a specific game to a specific performance and anything in between. So I'm going to start it off with what I could have picked from a multitude of Super Bowls in this last decade, multitude of Super Bowls that involved the Patriots in terms of, just in their last 4 games, they've had 3 all-time epic games, whether it's the Seahawks game where you have the don't give the ball to Marshawn, throw it at the one for whatever reason, and Malcolm Butler picks it off. You have the 28-3 biggest comeback ever, or comeback collapse, however, depending on who you wanted to win, will determine how you look at that game. But regardless, it's still on paper as one of the biggest comeback. Well, as the biggest comeback in Super Bowl history. Obviously, it's a crazy moment. They look dead to rights halfway through that third quarter. You just figured, Atlanta's gonna get it done. You didn't know if Tom Brady was ever gonna win another Super Bowl. And then from that game coming back, he's been to 2 more. So clearly, this guy is he defies Father Time. At least he has up until this point. In terms of, it doesn't matter how old he gets, he still finds ways to get the team to the playoffs and gets them to the Super Bowl. We'll see if it happens this year, but at least the last 3 years he's made it to the Super Bowl every year, won 2 of them. So yeah, he's been great. But the game that he didn't win, that's going to be my first moment. Just in terms of, that was one of. I'm only 24, so in my 24 years, probably, and I've been watching football fairly religiously since I was about 7, 8. So the last 15, 16, 17 years, this is the best Super Bowl I ever remember watching, just because it was back and forth. It had great performances on both sides, from Tom Brady throwing for 500 yards, Nick Foles throwing for 3 touchdowns, 300 plus yards, catching a touchdown. Speaking of that catch, it has one of the more iconic plays in NFL history and Super Bowl history, obviously, in terms of the Philly special. Great play, great. That play could have been its own moment in and of itself, and that might be on your list, but I also want to include the whole game just because it was back and forth all game. You think the Eagles are going to be able to get a hand on it. Patriots come back. Eagles come back again in the second half. Then the Patriots start going to Gronk, start feeding Gronk, and Gronk is just killing it. They had no answer for him. They take the lead. Philly drives right down the field, but drives down the field, gets a go-ahead touchdown with Zach Ertz. You had controversial moments in terms of that Zach Ertz touchdown catch, the Corey Clement catch earlier in the second half, where was he bobbing the ball? Was it just moving to get a better grip on it? All that stuff that was kind of talked about after that in terms of the catching rules, because as you can see, even to this day, it's still hard to determine exactly what was the catch. If you watched different level, but if you watch a college football playoff game with Clemson, Ohio State, it's still to this day hard to tell what a catch is. So you had that. You have the Brandon Graham strip sack. Like I said, it's the best Super Bowl I've ever watched. There's many people older than me that may not believe it's the best Super Bowl ever in terms of entertainment wise, just back and forth stuff. But it's my favorite one. So that had to be on the list. You also got, you could have the Golden State 2016 playoffs in as a moment just because you had the Game 6 Western Conference Finals, Klay Thompson, the 11 threes. That was my other moment just because I remember watching that game and I'm just like, it was just crazy to see every time he put up, he put up a three, seemed like he made, he kept them. He, long story short, won them the game. If he makes 7, 8 threes instead of 11, they lose. The Warriors lose, and they obviously end up losing the finals anyway, which I'll get to in a moment. But that they don't even make it to the finals, and that season's even more disappointing than what it ended up ultimately being. And that game, in my opinion, and the opinion of a few other people, very well changed the landscape of basketball, because if they lose that game, they probably don't get Kevin Durant, because I don't think he would have left there having just beat them. He would have realized that he could have maybe stayed in OKC and won. They might have won the championship that year, so he definitely would have stayed. The Cleveland still could have won that championship, but maybe if it goes down differently, Kyrie still wants to stay. They don't end up trading him. Golden State, do they end up keeping Harrison Barnes? How does their core shape out? They don't end up with Kevin Durant, most likely. They don't now end up with D'Lo. It's just the ramifications of that performance, that Game 6 performance, is why I got to have it on there, just because the entire NBA could very well be different had Klay Thompson not been amazing that day. And plus, it birthed the Game 6 Klay. He was good in that Game 6. He was good in Game 6 of the Western Conference Finals the next year when they were down 3-2. Helped propel them to the win there. He was great in the Game 6 of the following Western Conference semis against the Rockets again to help knock them out of the playoffs. So yeah, that birthed the Game 6 Klay. He was good in the Game 6 of the finals until he got. I'm trying to remember. Did he get hurt Game 5 or Game 6? Yeah, hurt Game 6. He was good. He was good in that game until he got hurt. He was good in that whole finals until he got hurt in his past finals against the Raptors. So, there's so many different things that were birthed from that moment. So yeah, that had to be on my list. And then just jumping forward from there, the 2016 finals. I was only going to mention Game 7, but you could mention that whole finals is one of the best moments of the decade, just because of after the Warriors had to come back from down 3-1 to beat the Thunder. The Cavs, they come back from down 3-1 to beat the Warriors, to win the NBA Finals, to win the first title in Cleveland in so many years. LeBron finally did one for his home, for not necessarily his hometown because he's from Akron, but for his home team. Him and Kyrie were sensational those last 3 games. You have, that Game 7, you have the iconic blocked by James, called by Mike Breen. You have, shout out to J.R. Smith on that play, because had he not got Iguodala to readjust, LeBron doesn't get there in time. You have after that block. Even though during that last period of the game, no one could score. It was the craziest thing, just because you were like, all right, the first team to score is probably going to win, just because both teams you could tell were out of gas. And then Kyrie ended up being the one. You have his little step back 3 from the right wing to give him the lead. Then you have Kevin Love putting the clamps on Steph Curry on the next possession, even though I still think he could have driven by him. He didn't need the 3 there, but I understood why he shot it. Steph Curry, so I'm not going to tell him not to shoot threes. But yes, you got that. That game was amazing. 2016 was a great year. In that same year, you have the Cubs winning the World Series against Cleveland. That was, their first series in 100 years. That was a great moment. That Game 7 was nuts in terms of just the back and forth. Rajay Davis tying it up late, the rain delay kind of helping calm the Cubs down. That was great. That I had to put that one on my list. One of my favorite moments. And obviously, I can't talk about, going back to basketball, I can't talk about the NBA Finals without talking about Game 6 2013, Ray Allen, the shot. Again, not going to question Pop, but why'd you take Tim Duncan off the floor when you just need to get the rebound? I'm just saying, if after LeBron misses the 3, if Chris Bosh is unable to get the rebound, then the Spurs win the finals. And I'm saying that was another one that 3 helped shape the lead, because if LeBron loses that finals, even having won the finals the year before, then his whole legacy, the way people look at him is all different. The way people think about him is different. And then maybe they blow that team up. They might have to. People are already talking about them potentially. People were talking about the year before them trading Chris Bosh, that they didn't beat the Thunder. But then who knows if they lose that finals? Maybe they do end up trading Chris Bosh because it would have been LeBron's last year. Like that would have been a whole mess. So Ray Allen, I mean, granted, they still need to win Game 7. Spurs had a shot in Game 7, but I mean, that shot may very well have helped to save LeBron's legacy. So shout out to Ray Allen if you're a Bron fan. Just because, I mean, if it's not the biggest shot in the NBA Finals history, it's got to be 2 or 3. Well, I guess if you can't play that LeBron block on Iguodala is probably the biggest play. But I mean, if it's not, I mean, those two, Ray Allen, LeBron, James Blocker, 1A, 1B. So that was great. Going back to baseball, you got that Dodgers-Astros Game 5 of their World Series that would finish like 13-12. It was one of the craziest things I've ever seen. Just teams hitting home runs back and forth. Every time somebody swung, it seemed like the ball was going out of the park. I mean, neither team could have to go to extra innings. I mean, the Dodgers had to score 3 runs in the top of the 9th, I believe, to even get it to extra innings. Alex Bregman, that's where he really became a World Series and a national name and a World Series hero just because of getting the walk-off hit off of Kenley Jansen. I mean, you had big home runs from George Springer, from Correa, from Altuve, from Yasiel Puig. That was easily one of the, I mean, again, if you're a baseball purist, you didn't like it because the lack of good pitching, but in my perspective, that's one of the most entertaining baseball games I've ever watched. And, I mean, I will put it up there against any baseball game, at least World Series game, in recent memory. And then a couple more to finish it out. Tiger coming back, winning the Masters. Just when, obviously, from all he's been through, all he had gone through, just to get back to that point, all the injuries, all the infidelity scandals, everything, just to see him get back, and just to see like the impact he still has on the culture and the sports culture, the sports world, and on golf itself, just to see the massive crowd and flow of people following him down to the green on 18 was still one of the craziest shots ever. Just because you could just see like the impact that a great player has on the sport, and I mean, you could argue no other player has had the impact from a culture perspective that Tiger Woods has had, and obviously when he was dominant, he might have been the most dominant player in any sport. Though, I mean, obviously we have real quick, I want to touch on the athletes of the decade. They were LeBron for the male and Serena for the female. So I mean, those two are as dominant. Serena's probably could argue the most dominant athlete ever, respective of sport. And gender, but it just Tiger was another one who when he's playing well, it's must like you have to watch it. No matter how much or how little you care about golf, he's a guy that if he's playing well, he's playing in contention on Sundays, you gotta watch it. So seeing him come back and being able to win another major when it looked like it was never going to happen again was a really cool moment. And then the last two were Simone Biles in her Olympic performance in 2016, just because she had come in as one of the most accomplished U.S. athletes ever, let alone U.S. gymnasts. But it was like, she'd never done it on an Olympic stage. So can she handle the pressure? And I mean, she exceeded the pressure, won like 4 gold medals, 5 in total. I mean, including like the team medal they won. She won 3 individual golds and a bronze. And she was just as good as advertised, probably better than advertised. And it was just one of those performances where you came in wondering, all right, you had heard so much about this girl, can she live up to the hype? And she lived up to it and succeeded it and exceeded it. So that was great. And I mean, since then she's continued to be dominant. She may very well continue her dominance into 2020 if she decides she wants to go to the Olympics again. But I mean, she's easily the greatest U.S. gymnast ever. Maybe one of the greatest U.S. athletes ever, just in terms of her accomplishments and what she's won, the record she has, and all that stuff. But I mean, and then on top of that, she may very well be the greatest gymnast, period, from any country. I mean, obviously, I'm not a gymnastics buff, so I don't want to. Maybe some people that know a little bit more gymnastics can tell me I'm missing out on names, but Simone Biles has to be up there, and she could have easily been the athlete of the decade for the women. I think she finished second. So, I mean, Serena. So, anything Serena wins, I am always in favor of. But it was just funny, just because she could have. Simone Biles is the person that could have easily won that as well. And the last one was the Carly Lloyd hat trick in the 2015 World Cup. I mean, the fastest hat trick ever. And, I think it was fastest hat trick ever in a World Cup. I mean, she scored 2 goals in like the first 5 minutes of the game. She capped off the hat trick with a goal from midfield. I mean, it was amazing. Like literally 20 minutes in, the game was already over. U.S. had already. I mean, they didn't end up winning because Japan scored a couple more goals, but by then it was already one of the craziest things ever. 20 minutes in, you're like, oh my god, USA is going to win the World Cup. And so that was just great, just because it was history. So anytime history's on there, no matter the sport, it's always impressive. So those are some of my moments. Like I said, you guys will have different moments. I imagine you will. Some things will have the same thing. Some things will have different depending on what sports you like, what sports you follow. But those are just some of my personal favorites. And that'll do it here for me. Like I said, I'm filming this on New Year's Eve. So this is the last GSMC Sports podcast of the decade. I want to thank you guys for your support. And you guys for tuning in, listening. I want to remind you guys to subscribe to the network. Make sure you never miss a podcast episode. Give us a like, 5-star rating, review, all that stuff. Like I said, it helps us it helps us get feedback, helps us see where we can improve at. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, like us on Facebook. And you can interact with us that way as well. We can talk about you can tweet us some of your top sports moments of the decade that I may have left out. Because like I said, I couldn't touch on everything, but I tried to get as much as I could in what I liked. So you guys may have different things, so feel free to reach out. Tell me some of your favorite moments, some things I missed, some things you didn't agree on, you didn't think it was that impressive. And then just, whether that's in that last segment, just anything today, I love to tell sports. Everybody associated with this podcast loves to talk about sports, so please reach out to us. We can talk about sports any day, anytime, any place. So once again, I want to wish you guys all a Happy New Year. Thank you. Peace out.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.